and welcome to the April Oh So Inspired Video Hop collaboration hosted by Call Me Crafty Owl. My name is Marla, and today we are bringing you inspiration using a card that we found on social media. All of us will be presenting our interpretation of the design. You can use the hashtag that is on the screen in order to find all the creators, or there will be a playlist in the description box below. We have some new creators. I will have all of the channels linked below. Here's a look at our inspiration piece. It is from Leslie Miller, which is Running with Scissors. I will link her social media as well as a link to this card again in the description box below. Here's a look at the Botanical Bounty stamp set that I'll be highlighting on my card today from Papertrey Ink. I decided to go with the florals. I'm a floral girl, so why mess with something that's working? I'm also going to use the coordinating dies, and I have some beautiful pink fresh studio ink. You will notice that I do have that purple in the mix, so again inspired by Leslie's card, and I'm using fresh pear, key lime, candied violet, lavender, raspberry bliss, and bubblegum. I am using my stamp block today, and my first thought was to do that understamping that Leslie had on her card that was absolutely beautiful. And so this is where I was going with this. I started with the fresh pear, and I inked up my stamp, spritzed it with water, and stamped it. I'll do the same thing with the bubblegum for this floral, and then I'll add the lavender and spritz it with water again. The water is going to allow the ink to move. It will also give it that water splatter look and give it kind of a watercolor feel. The stamp already kind of has that built in, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have a super crisp image. I was going for something just a little bit more loose. This time I'm going to add two tones, starting with the Raspberry Bliss, adding in the candied violet, softening the edges where the two stamp pads met, making sure I don't have a harsh line, using that little blending brush. I'll do it all over again, Raspberry Bliss and lavender this time. Spritz it with water, use that little blending brush to soften up the lines and stamp it. So it's at this point that I realize that I just want to stamp the florals. I'm not going to do the understamping. I'm going to die cut all of these pieces out, and we are going to follow the same orientation with the vertical flowers on the card as Leslie did. This time for one of my leaves, I'm using the key lime. And then I'm going to go back to the single colors. I'm going to do a little bit of a mixture on this card, leaning more heavily on the solids, but I will add one of these dual mixtures onto the card just to add a little bit more interest. I'm going to drop this right here. My pad is a little bit too wet and it wasn't holding on to the stamp. I should have wiped it off when I spritzed it the first time. And I got a little bit of that green ink on that violet flower, but no worries, I'm going to make that flower work. All right, so we have Raspberry Bliss, and we are using the candied violet. I'm going to bring in mint, and I'm going to add one of the smaller leaves. And then we'll die cut everything out. So these are all the pieces that I'll be using on my card today. Let's do a little bit of stenciling instead of understamping. I'm going to start with a new color, which is Soft Lilac. This is the lightest of the Lavender Lilac inks for Pink Fresh Studio. I'm going to add it to the upper layer of this stencil, and then I'll add the darker lavender towards the bottom for a two-tone effect. Because Leslie's card did have that left of center orientation or design, I'm going to mimic that with my card today. I thought that it was a really pretty design. This is a two-step stencil. It doesn't layer over each other, but I will be able to easily add a second color to the left side of these little crochet pieces. As I mentioned, or I'm not sure if I mentioned, this is called Simple Stitch Crochet Large. It's from Papertrey Ink. And I did turn the stencil upside down, so it really is supposed to go in the other orientation, but I thought it kind of looked like petals, and so I went ahead and flipped it so that it had that leaf-like appearance. I forgot that I was doing a gradient here, and I went ahead and used that bubble gum all the way down that card panel, all the way down that stencil. But because the Raspberry Bliss is more intense than the bubble gum, it was no big deal, because all I did was just go a little bit more heavy-handed adding that in. So I have the lighter colors at the top, darker colors at the bottom, and I think it's really pretty. We're going to cut this panel down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I'll bring in a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of lavender cardstock. That is going to be the backing, and then I'll adhere this to an A2 top folding card base once I have everything together. I did do a dry fit for this. And when I did my dry fit, I took a picture of it so that I know where I want all of my pieces. I'm adding that foam tape to the back of all of the florals, and to save a little bit of time on this video, I did add off camera some more dimension behind the entire panel. So I'm doing another dry fit, as I mentioned, so that I know where my sentiment should go. This sentiment is a retired sentiment from Papertrey ink. I'll ink it up with Raspberry Bliss, ink it up one more time to get that really deep, intense color, and then we can start putting all of our pieces together. So there you can see the dry fit where I was auditioning all of these pieces. That was when I was trying to decide whether I really wanted to stick with the vertical orientation of the flowers, or whether I wanted to switch and go with a horizontal, and I stuck with the vertical because I just thought that it was a really pretty design, as I mentioned before. There is that violet that had the stamp fall on it. All I did was cut it off and use it on the edge of that panel, so I was able to still use it. I am going to change it up though in the long run, because I do find that this is a little bit more purple heavy when it comes to the flowers, and I thought I needed another pink back in. So off camera I am going to stamp with the bubble gum. I'm going to add a heavy coating of the waters to really lighten up that bubblegum stamp or ink, and I am going to go over that purple, I guess they're like violets, so I'm going to call it a violet. I'm going to go over the purple violet with a pink one, and I think that it balances out the card a little bit more. This little leaf kept getting away from me. I don't know what was going on with that, but once I get that adhered down, I'm going to go ahead and add my final flower. And then again, following Leslie's card, I am going to use some jewels from Pink Fresh Studio. I have a ton of embellishments, jewels, sequins, seed beads, you name it, and I don't use them as often as I should. So I was really inspired by the fact that Leslie did use those sequins on her card. She used pretty much the same color as I did. There's a look at Leslie's card and a look at my card side by side. I'll get all of these in place, and then I'll use my art glitter glue to glue these down. And I keep my art glitter glue in a Barely Arts bottle just because I like the tip. So here we go. That panel does have foam tape behind it. I'm going to add it to my A2 top folding card base, and here's where I'm going to switch out that pink flower with the purple flower, and that will complete my card for today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Please make sure that you stop at each of the channels of the participants in this hop. There are some amazing creators that are going to just knock your socks off. Don't forget to come back on the 20th of May to see what inspires us next month. And until then, I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for stopping by.